The Ohio State Penitentiary wasn't just a prison. It was a steel fortress built to contain the most unpredictable and dangerous men in the state, lifers, repeat violent offenders, and those who had nowhere left to go except deeper into the system. Guards walked the halls believing the place was unbreakable, a silent machine of schedules, steel doors, and routine. But behind that silence, something else was happening. 1998 began like any other year inside OSP, loud, restless, and thick with tension. But beneath the noise, whispered conversations were forming in the corners of the recreation yard, in the shadows of the workshop, and in the narrow space between bunks. The men who would later be known across America as the most unexpected escape crew in Ohio history were already studying the penitentiary like a puzzle. They weren't the type you'd expect to work together. One was known for brute strength. Another for his quiet, calculating intelligence. Another was good at making things disappear, tools, scraps, items no inmate should ever possess. And one had the rarest asset of all, patience. The ringleader, Marcus Delaney, had the kind of calm that unsettled even hardened guards. He wasn't loud, he wasn't wild, he was focused. He had spent nearly a decade watching, cataloging, memorizing. He had seen guards switch shifts, learned which officers were alert and which ones slept through the night, which ones chatted too long in the hall, and which ones forgot to double-check the locks they were responsible for. Marcus wasn't looking for freedom. He was looking for revenge against a system he believed had buried him alive. And revenge, he thought, required precision. The escape plan didn't start as a strategy. It started as a question. One night, while the prison lay wrapped in its usual heavy darkness, Marcus stared through the narrow slit of his cell window watching the floodlights sweep the courtyard. He whispered to his cellmate, "What if all of this, every inch of it, ain't as secure as they think?" His cellmate laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But Marcus wasn't smiling. Over the next 3 months, that simple question grew into something bold, dangerous, yes, but astonishingly structured. Marcus began observing the ventilation system. It was old, rusted. Some sections hadn't been checked in years. And on the far east side of the penitentiary, the ductwork connected to a maintenance tunnel that led dangerously close to the outer wall. Marcus knew this because he had worked maintenance years earlier. A job no guard had bothered to remember. By mid-year, Marcus quietly recruited the 3 others he knew he needed. Not the strongest men nor the angriest, but the ones who understood discipline. If any part of the plan failed, they would die inside the walls. If caught, they'd never see the outdoors again, not even in shackles. This wasn't a gamble, it was an operation. They practiced crawling through confined spaces by sliding under bunks and through storage shelves. They measured their breathing, learned to move silently, learned hand signals in the dark. Every night the penitentiary slept, and every night the plan sharpened. The first major test came in late October. Marcus needed to confirm whether the ventilation shaft behind the laundry room was still unguarded. But getting there without attracting suspicion meant taking small steps. Smuggling tiny tools, loosening a screw here, shifting a grate there, never doing too much at once. One wrong move would alert the guards. One missing bolt could trigger lockdown. One careless whisper could cost them all their lives. But Marcus had chosen his men well. And on a night when rain hammered the prison roof and thunder drowned out the world, they removed the grate, inch by corroded inch. Behind it lay the dark mouth of the ventilation shaft, colder than expected, filled with grit and the terrible smell of old machinery. The men stared at it in silence. This was the doorway between captivity and a chance, just a chance, at freedom. The first crawl nearly broke them. The duct was tighter than they imagined, the metal edges sharp, tearing at elbows and shins as they squeezed through. Their breaths echoed back at them, bouncing off iron walls like distant whispers. More than once, one of them froze, convinced they were stuck, that the shaft would become their tomb. But Marcus led from the front. Every time someone faltered, he whispered, "Keep moving. Don't think. Just breathe." When they emerged an hour later into the pitch-black maintenance corridor, they realized something shocking. No alarms. No guards. No cameras. Just a forgotten tunnel that hadn't been inspected in years. The escape was no longer a fantasy. It was real. For the next 30 nights, they returned to the shaft in rotations, widening the path, preparing the tunnel, studying guard movements. The plan was becoming larger than themselves. Marcus wasn't just trying to escape, he was rewriting the rules of the most secure prison in Ohio. But every success came with fear. One night, a guard paused near the laundry room longer than usual. One night, the lights flickered in the maintenance corridor, a sign that someone else might have been nearby. One night, they heard footsteps above the shaft and froze breathless for 5 full minutes until the sound faded away. Still Marcus refused to stop. "Fear ain't a sign to quit," he whispered. "It's a sign it's working." By early December, the final stages were ready. They had built makeshift harnesses from laundry straps. They had hidden a metal file inside a hollowed-out mop handle. They had timed the guard's shift change down to the second. All that remained was to break through a final rusted panel that separated the maintenance tunnel from the exterior drainage path leading toward the outside wall. Christmas lights were glowing in houses miles away. Families were sleeping. Snow was beginning to fall over Ohio. And inside the state penitentiary, 4 inmates prepared for a night that would shake the country. An escape so bold, so calculated, and so unbelievable that America would wake up stunned. Marcus stood at the entrance of the shaft, listening to the distant hum of the prison's generators. His heart pounded with a cold, unwavering intensity. Behind him, the others waited, silent and ready. "Tonight," he whispered, "the walls finally learn, they ain't as strong as they think." With that, the men climbed into the darkness, crawling toward the impossible. And the escape of 1998 had begun. Snow was falling over Ohio the night everything collapsed. Not heavy snow, just a thin, cold sheet drifting from the sky, covering the yard outside the penitentiary in soft white. From the outside, the prison looked peaceful, almost silent. Inside, however, tension was tightening like a wire ready to snap. Marcus Delaney and his crew were already deep inside the ventilation shaft, moving like shadows through the metal throat of the prison. The plan was no longer a sketch in Marcus's head. This was it, no turning back, no second chances. The deeper they crawled, the louder the prison seemed to echo behind them. Every clank from the ductwork felt like a thunderclap, every shuffle of boots above them sounded like a trap closing. But Marcus kept going, pushing through the sharp metal edges and the freezing air until their knees were numb and their backs were raw. When they dropped into the maintenance corridor, they moved with the calm precision of a team that had practiced for months. The corridor smelled of rust and old water. A flickering light buzzed overhead, the only witness to their betrayal of the prison's design. The final barrier, the rusted access panel leading to the outer drainage path, waited ahead like a locked doorway to freedom. Marcus knelt beside it and pressed his ear against the metal. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Only the steady hum of the generator rooms far away. He nodded once. The others handed him the hollowed-out mop handle, inside of which they'd hidden a sharpened metal file. Marcus worked slowly, dragging the tool across the weakened metal. The sound was soft, controlled, muted under layers of dust. But as the minutes turned into an hour, sweat began forming on their faces despite the cold. The prison wasn't sleeping anymore. Shift change was approaching. Finally, the panel gave way with a brittle snap. Behind it lay a narrow, freezing drainage tunnel carved beneath the prison, stretching toward the outer wall. Snowflakes blew in through the opening, carrying with them the fresh scent of outside air. For the first time in years, the men breathed freedom, even if it was only a taste. Marcus slid into the drainage path first. The cold water soaked his clothes immediately, but he didn't flinch. The others followed, moving in single-file silence until they reached the stone lip beneath the outer wall. Above them, barbed wire, perimeter lights, and armed guards. Beyond that, open land, darkness, and possibility. The escape wasn't over. The hardest part was still ahead. Marcus inspected the wall from below. The drainage exit was just a few feet from the base, hidden under a concrete ledge. They had memorized the guard rotation. For exactly 2 minutes every hour, the lights wouldn't sweep this corner. It wasn't much time. But it was enough. One of the men lifted a stripped metal bar they'd hidden inside their clothes. Marcus wedged it into the wall's foundation crack and began prying. The concrete groaned quietly, too quietly for anyone above to hear. Snow swallowed the sound. The moment the crack widened, they slipped through into the narrow perimeter shadow. The air outside was brutally cold, stabbing into their lungs, but it felt like fire, freedom burning inside their chests. They crouched low, watching the guard tower sweep left, and then right, and then... "Now," Marcus whispered. They sprinted. Silently. Fiercely. Across the open ground like wolves breaking from a cage. Boots hit snow, breath tore from their throats, hearts hammered. The tower light swung back just seconds after they slid behind a cluster of maintenance equipment. If the guard had turned his head even a fraction sooner, the escape would have ended right there. But fate, for once, was on their side. Beyond the equipment lay a service road leading into the vast fields surrounding the penitentiary. No fences, no alarms, no more walls, just miles of darkness. The prison had been designed to break spirits, not to stop men who had already decided nothing could. Marcus scanned the darkness, then pointed toward the tree line. "We move." They vanished into the night. Inside the penitentiary, guards laughed, drank coffee, complained about the cold. No one suspected 4 inmates were crawling through the snow beyond the walls. But when the sun rose the next morning, everything changed. A guard doing rounds noticed the loose grate in the laundry room. Another noticed muddy footprints near the ventilation shaft. Then someone found the cracked panel behind the maintenance corridor. Within minutes, the alarm system exploded. Sirens wailed across the compound. Lights flashed. Inmates were locked down. Guards sprinted across the yard. Helicopters were scrambled. The escape wasn't just a breach, it was a humiliation. 4 inmates had outsmarted a supermax penitentiary that claimed to be impenetrable. News of the escape spread across Ohio within hours. And by midday it reached the entire country. Reporters swarmed the scene. Officials blamed outdated infrastructure. Politicians demanded answers. Families near the prison locked their doors. And somewhere far from the walls, Marcus and his crew were trudging through the frozen landscape, cold, hungry, terrified, but free. The adrenaline kept them moving, the fear kept them sharp, and the knowledge that the entire state was searching for them kept them hidden. They found shelter that night in an abandoned maintenance shed near a railroad line. The wind howled through the wooden boards, rattling the structure like an old ghost. They huddled together in silence, listening to helicopters thundering overhead. Marcus spoke quietly, his voice steady even now. "This ain't freedom yet. This is the price of it." They slept in shifts, always listening, always waiting for the sound of boots or engines. By morning, the hunt had grown into one of the largest manhunts in Ohio history. Hundreds of officers, dogs, aircraft, and federal agents were deployed. Posters showing the inmates' faces appeared in gas stations and on television. America watched with a mix of fear and fascination. For men, no weapons, no food, no transportation. Yet they had vanished into the winter woods as if the earth had swallowed them. Marcus knew the manhunt would close in fast. He knew they had only hours left. But he also knew something the authorities didn't. He had a plan the others hadn't heard yet. A final move. A desperate gamble. And it would lead to a confrontation that would shake Ohio to its core. The escape was no longer just an escape. It was becoming a legend.